SIDY CISSOKO from the G League Ignite is my favorite sleeper in the 2023 draft. This is Floor and Ceiling, let's break him down. At 6'8" and still growing, French connector SIDY CISSOKO took his talents from Spain to the G League Ignite this season. To varying degrees, and just having turned 19, he's shown flashes of being able to dribble, pass, and shoot, all the while bringing additional value through his multi-positional ability and athleticism. Looking ahead, I think Sissoko's swing skill is the 3. This season he made a little over 31% of his threes, shooting just under 4 a game. The volume was fine on 156 shots, but the percentage has to improve. I expect that these types of spot-up or catch-and-shoot threes will be the shots Sissoko is asked to take the most, at least early on. He profiles as more of a role player, which is fine. Nearly all of his trades this season were assisted, but then Sissoko has to be shooting in the high 30s instead of in the low 30s. That said, I do think he's a slightly better shooter than his numbers indicate. Looking at the tape, I'm really encouraged by his footwork and variety. Sissoko doesn't have a lightning fast release, but he's fluid enough, and I don't think that matters too much at 6'8", when he's getting relatively easy looks without much pressure. SIDY squares his body well to the rim and his range is fine, but what I like the most is how he steps into his shots. Sissoko shows off that versatility, getting the block on one end before hopping into and swishing the 3 in transition. Watch his feet here as SIDY runs the dribble handoff, pops, and makes the 3 totally on balance. SIDY still has a ways to go, but he had a really bad 9-game slump in March to end the season, where he only made 11% of his threes. At the same time, his scorching 48% in February also isn't realistic. Right now, Sissoko still has a slower shot, so he can get rushed in tight spaces. Recently, players who I really enjoyed on playoff teams all made around 40% of their three-pointers. The 3 made up most of their shot diet since they played next to other ball-dominant star players. I expect that Sissoko will have to do the same in the NBA, just as he did with Scoot Henderson for the Ignite. Right now, about 40% of SIDY's shot attempts are threes. For this stage of his development, that's fine, but in the future the volume is likely going to have to go up and the numbers will need to match that. The French playmaker can add a lot of other interesting offensive tools that we'll get into, namely his passing and driving, but those lanes won't be there if SIDY isn't cashing in on his threes. He won't be able to attack closeouts, and his passing options will significantly decrease. This is the type of stuff that I love to see from SIDY, and it's what brings the best pieces of his game together: the potential shot, the playmaking, and his athleticism. Sissoko played the guard a lot growing up in Spain, so he's really skillful and creative as a passer like we're seeing here, and we'll dive into in a lot more detail. However, he can also score. Sissoko has to become more consistent. Even now, he's left relatively open a lot of the time, and he can't quite make defenses pay. But the tools are there. Once those threes go in, Sissoko has shown flashes of scoring at the rim in just a few dribbles, but I don't think he's been able to do this enough until now. Not because he can't, but maybe because of his inconsistent outside scoring as well as the contextual pieces to this. I really love watching the G League Ignite, but they're always a super young team that's still really learning how to play basketball at a high level. It's more so about experience and future outlook rather than results, which is why I'm focusing on the flashes. Sissoko is able to play out of just a few dribbles, which is going to be key for him at the next level, and even though he doesn't have the most creative handle, his guard skills at 6'8" are enough for what he does. Sissoko is not quick twitch, but he can pick up speed when he has a runway. And then, his strong, wide frame allows him to play in compact spaces. Having evaluated him in person multiple times, Sissoko's upper and lower body looks close to NBA ready. Here he has the ISO on former number 7 pick Emmanuel Mudiay and just completely bullies him. We've also seen SIDY get some reps in the pick and roll. He can get to his spot using his body or pace, and then finish through contact. Outside of this, Sissoko is also fun to watch in transition. He really blossomed as an athlete in the G League Ignite setting. Now Sissoko is 6'8", I would think stronger than his build 200 pounds, and he can be a really useful tool in the open court. SIDY throws down some huge dunks, and playing the G League's fast pace and alongside willing playmakers helped as well. Overall, Sissoko made about 65% of his shots at the rim, although that number goes down to about 51% if we're only counting layups. At this point, SIDY is more comfortable in transition than in the half court. Right now I think it's fine, it's the case for most teenagers, so when he's up against set defenses, what I'm largely focused on is how he attacks closeouts when he's spotting up, catching off a swing, etc. Sissoko has shown flashes, but the conversion on layups is gonna need to improve. Broadly speaking, I buy the overall package, but SIDY needs to shoot to be able to finish since he's not much of a self-creator. So far, he's yet to prove that he can do either one at a consistent enough level. For me, there's two broad improvement points here. The first, Sissoko doesn't really have an in-between game. A floater, a push shot, or even a short jumper really. Like I've been saying, he's 6'8" with some handle, so getting to his spots shouldn't be too big of an issue. It's what he does when he gets there. Then, Sissoko can still finish below the rim and struggle to convert in some circumstances. His body's really improved, but he can still get stuck underneath at times when he has to drive and then bump to create space. This can be addressed in the short term, but it just goes to show how important functional strength is in the NBA. That's why I also think that SIDY needs more craft, more counters when the defense takes his first move away, but those should come in time. Ideally, Sissoko will also become more capable when it comes to creating his own load. As we saw, virtually all of his three-pointers this season were assisted. It was more balanced at the rim to be fair, but there's plenty of room for growth when it comes to the process. Sissoko has guard skills, but for all intents and purposes cannot play as the primary ball handler in the NBA right now. He's found more success when limited to a few dribbles, because SIDY still finds it tough to create his own offense off the bounce. Defenders can get into and bother Sissoko because his handle remains loose. He also doesn't get low enough to the floor, so it's too high. That said, what else can Sissoko add to a team? Potentially a bit of everything. I thought that Sissoko had an up and down season production-wise, but he developed extremely well with the Ignite program. A huge part of that was that he genuinely played 1 through 5. His role one game could be more like a center, early in the season like a 3-and-D wing, down the stretch much more like a guard. Either way, Sissoko's feel and adaptability popped out big time. His passing is probably the best indicator of those two areas. SIDY had 141 assists to 81 turnovers for a pretty solid ratio. You can use him in many ways. He comes off the screen here to generate the corner 3. But as we're seeing right now, Sissoko can also act as the ball handler in the pick and roll. This one here is awesome with how he decelerates and fakes everyone out before he finds the big man. I also love how quick and assertive he is with his decision making. Sissoko's not the type of guard to kill a possession with the ball in his hands. Almost always, he's snappy and, like with his scoring, able to play within reduced touches. He's best suited to a secondary role. Everything I just said also applies to when Sissoko is attacking off the catch, which will translate if the threes go in at a steadier clip. The Ignite connector's playmaking also shows up in transition, which is no surprise. Sissoko can scan the entire floor, has moving pieces around him, and the pizzazz to hit some showtime passes. Sissoko can push and read both sides of the court, which is nice, and he's adept at creating threes in transition. These skip passes are really important for all guards. What I love most though is how Sissoko transforms defense into offense in a moment's notice, and he usually does so within a highlight play too. We've seen sequences like this time and time again this season, which should definitely translate to the next level. Sissoko has understanding, athleticism, anticipation, and creativity. Almost always, Sissoko is looking to set up his teammates on the break. As for his scoring, a lot of it remains theoretical. For instance, Ignite had some success putting Sissoko in or cutting into the dunker spot. That mitigates his issues with outside shooting and self-creation. All he has to do there is maybe get going downhill and catch and finish, which is fine a few times a game maybe, but it's too limiting to be a recurring look. I also do wonder if he'll be more of an impactful rebounder in a different setting. Ignite didn't ask this from him, but Sissoko appears to have some tools. But in regards to pull-ups, right now they're very much an added bonus. Most of Sissoko's jumpers were assisted. For example, in the G League regular season, only 18% weren't, and I think this will be even more so the case in the NBA. From 3, this is great to see to ice the game, but really, I'm not sure Sissoko is going to be taking too many of these. I am paying more attention from 2. I don't think that Sissoko has to be particularly efficient here, he just has to be a more willing shooter from in between. With his size and solid mechanics, I think Sissoko is going to be able to get his jumper off over most defenders off 1 or 2 dribbles. So getting this shot down and then an additional floater will be really important for him to attack closeouts, or if he's using a pick and roll. And this turnaround fall away 2 as a counter is nice to see. But I must stress, these are tiny flashes over 40 plus games. Anything substantial is really far and might never even be used. Again, the first thing to highlight with SIDYCissoko's defense is his versatility. This season we saw him defend 5s, such as here against Kenny Lofton Jr., cover NBA wings such as Justin Anderson, who SIDY locks down here while switching his hips and staying in a stance, and also check smaller, quicker point guards. Now, all of these things are contextual. Sissoko didn't guard 5s all the time. He only did so over a few games, but it's the fact that he was even asked which really stands out to me, especially against an NBA player like Kenrich Williams. Sissoko is a long, rangy defender who guards with energy and engagement. Maybe he's not great at any one thing, but he's good at many. In space, Sissoko really stands out to me with how he matches and stays parallel to drives. He almost copies his opponent's footwork, so he stays in a stance, switches his hips when the attacker tries changing directions, and can shadow their strides. SIDY also knows how to use his length. I touched on this earlier when we saw how Sissoko turns defense into offense in transition, so I won't dive into this too much more, but really I think that's the biggest takeaway. How SIDY can potentially offset his gaps on one end with his work on the defensive side of the ball. Sissoko had 43 steals in 41 games this season, so more than 1 steal a night. You love to see it because Sissoko is one of those prospects who you are drafting with defense heavily in mind. His length, athleticism, and feel create plays. All those tools also pop up at the rim. Sissoko shows impressive upside with his rim protection flashes. For the season, he finished on 40 blocks. The French prospect understands verticality at 6'8", and he's physical enough to hang in the air, take bumps, and keep making plays through contact. I like how Sissoko tracks the ball and often keeps it in play when he gets the rejection, which allows his team the chance to get running down the other end. Wrapping up, Sissoko has very fixable issues, which are not uncommon. He's really switchy, but he can still give up strength to bigger players. It's not so much about height, since Sissoko is not going to be guarding 7-footers, but thicker forwards or small ball 5s will cause him problems. We're also yet to see how Sissoko looks against the best NBA guards in real spacing. Can he hold up at the point of attack, or is he more of a defender that you put on the secondary ball handler? Both are interesting and workable, but they imply a different floor and ceiling. Still, I'm intrigued by the overall package. Sissoko always pops out to me with his feel, his timing, length, and his hands, And he's fulfilled so many roles this season that I really buy into his malleability on both sides of the floor. For me, he's making a top 20 case. I know that his three-pointer has fallen off a little bit in recent times, but I think he's going to be fine enough to make them when it counts. And not even just that, I do think when defenses close out on him, he has more than enough to attack a closeout, get to the rim, or find a teammate. Maybe he's not really going to become a dynamic scorer off the bounce, but I don't really think that's what you want from him. I think you're looking for somebody who's a two-way, multi-positional prospect. CD has played everything really from 1 to 5 this season over different times, and I think that versatility is more valuable than ever in today's league. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment, tell me what you thought, and if you enjoy the channel, if you want to watch more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.